We are live.
Good morning, everyone. I call to order the Design Review Board for Tuesday, October 17, 2023. The first item on our agenda are the minutes of September 18, 2023. Do we have any corrections or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve. Do I have that motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Cheryl. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. The next item on our agenda is the Historic District at 6 Woods Lane. Is the applicant present? If so, if you could just take the podium and introduce yourself and give us a brief what you would like to do.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Strada, and I'm the managing member of Strada Baxter Design Build. We've done a few projects, historic projects here in the village. A couple that we've been recognized for by the Village Preservation Society at 223 Main Street, which is the third oldest building in the village on the pond. It's near Woods Lane. It's next door to the Moran House, and it's the 1770 Isaac Miller House, along with the 1822 Hiram Sanford House. So we've been doing this for a while, as you folks know. Barns are not new to us. And I think Bob Hefner was still consulting with the board when we talked about this barn a year or so ago, maybe a little longer. And we were before the board then because we were talking about doing a glass curtain wall on the west elevation of this very structure. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of a precursor to, yes, it's in those photographs, that photo packet. But that was sort of a precursor to trying to figure out really how the barn would be used. So a lot of time has gone by, a lot of thought has been put into how it can be used, and that's why I'm here today. Saying that barns are not new to us, we've done the Topping Rose barn at the old Bull's Head Inn in Bridgehampton. It's a drop girt potato barn, an original Bridgehampton barn, and also the Captain Isaac Sayer barn for the Southampton Historic Museum, and that's in Southampton. And speaking of Southampton, every Southampton meeting I've ever gone to talk about historic preservation, they constantly reference the drive into East Hampton Village, how they wished if they only had that entrance into the village. And Woods Lane, this particular structure, this house, really embodies that whole meaning that they grasp and that we all grasp, and why it's such a beautiful entrance into the village. But specifically this barn. So there's a photo packet that you have, and I want to thank Pam for pulling all this together. There's a photo packet there that shows you some of the real issues, structural issues, that exist in this building. There is a loft inside this building, and I think Tom will bear out that the loft that's existing in this building, I think, and our engineer has suggested, is probably holding the whole thing together. This existing loft is serving as a kind of a collar tie, holding the walls together. And when we were talking about this glass curtain wall, we discovered that, once you remove that loft area, how do you shore up, how do you reinforce, how do you underpin the structure so that nothing happens to it while you're doing whatever you're going to do to it, whatever is approved? So that became the challenge over these last many months, which is, what's the successful engineering solution to make sure nothing happens to this barn? So as you look at these photographs, and as Cheryl has the one on the first page, you'll see that that post holding up that bent is cracked in the worst possible place. And the reason why it's like that is the stress that's put on this south elevation. Somewhere in the history of this barn, somebody thought it would be great to put these barn doors in. I mean, they're not barn doors, they're just big doors. And in doing so, took nothing into account for the structure of this building. So the reality is, this has been happening for a long time. And when I first saw this in December of 2020, right as COVID was, we're getting beyond COVID, began to realize this structure has issues. And so that's why I've tried to capture them in these pictures. So if I may, I'd like to just read from what we are asking your permission to do. And you have the plans and the survey, so I'll just go from the plans for a moment. And I'm referring to this set of plans. So, we want to start with repairing and restoring the historic structure. By the way, we work on every historic project. We follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for the preservation of historic buildings. They are rock-solid guidelines. And I'm sure you've heard Bob Hefner invoke those guidelines over many years. So in following those guidelines, we'd like to remove this loft that I was referring to on the inside of the building. But in doing so, we need to very carefully underpin the structure and support the structure so that nothing happens to it. Now, the proposed work on the south elevation would be to install new cedar siding on the newly constructed exterior wall and remove the modern windows and cover them with that same siding. Now I'm referring to the south elevation. So you can see this is on the first page. We'd like to also install a real barn door with sliding barn door hardware. And we would only do so after we have properly restored the structure of the barn. The structural integrity of the barn is driving all of this. And behind that, you wouldn't necessarily see it, but behind that, we'd like to install a sliding glass door behind that exterior sliding barn door. And the design intent here is to control the temperature inside the structure. The proposed work on the south elevation of the garage, which is next to it and clad onto it, is simply to do this. We want to raise the existing gable section only of the garage to a new ridge height of 14 feet 11 inches. Now, in doing this, we're talking about not changing the footprint or not changing the use of the garage. It will remain a garage. The idea here is that we'd like to, if you look at the first top elevation on the first page, if you look at that drawing compared to the visual of the house today with the dormers, the idea of proposing to install the dormers is intended to reflect its identification with the house. So the dormers are included. They do not exist today, but we propose to include them. And then what we'd like to do is we'd like to replace the existing modern garage doors with double doors, wood. They would also be opening out. They would be batten-type doors, and they would function as garage doors, but they would not be folding, opening vertically, horizontally rather, the way a typical garage door does. They would be opening out much the way you might say a barn door might work. So that's the garage. That's the south elevation of the garage. Now the proposed work for the south elevation of something new is a covered porch. Now when you look at the drawing on the first page and you look at this new proposed structure to the left of the barn, it appears to be an enclosed structure. It's not. There are no sides to it. Those are columns. But we would like to be able to have the geometry of it match what's going on, what we're proposing for the garage. So we have a sense of balance to this whole idea. And then carry the idea of the dormers onto this proposed new structure, this covered terrace, the same way we're doing or proposing to do for the garage. Now, I'd like to go to the east elevation of the barn. And here we're talking about removing, this is actually on the bottom of the first page. Bottom of the first page. We're talking about only removing an existing modern window. And to orient everyone, east is essentially facing the pond. So this is a relatively new window that's in the barn that we'd like to remove and just cover over with siding, consistent with the siding that's there now. So that's the east elevation of the barn. The east elevation of the garage is what I was talking about a moment ago, and that is just to modify the gable section of the roof, not the shed section. So the only thing we're raising is the ridge, and we would then change the angle of that gable section so that it's symmetrical with the barn, so that when you're looking at it from the east, or if you're looking at it from the south, you'll see that it looks exactly like the pitch of the barn. And the pitch of the barn, we're not talking about changing at all. We're not talking about re-roofing it. We're only talking about making structural changes to the barn. So let me just continue, and I know this gets a little lengthy, and I'll try to wrap this up as fast as I can. So the west elevation of the barn is where this new proposed covered porch exists. And regarding the west elevation of the existing barn, if you recall, there are a few steps and a doorway entrance into the west elevation of the barn, which is how they access that cabana area of the existing barn. We're talking about removing that and replacing the siding with new siding that matches the existing. And then in removing that entrance, we're also going to remove the cover over that entrance and those existing steps. So now you have just the side of the barn. And install, as you can see in the drawing on the bottom of page 2 of the drawings, there you'll see, beyond the covered porch area, a new barn door, sliding barn doors, similar to the design and function of the one on the south elevation, so that we're using typical barn hardware, barn doors, double doors, and again, behind those, as we'd like to do on the west elevation, we want to put sliding glass doors on the inside so that we can control the temperature and humidity inside the structure, inside the barn. So that the let me just talk for a moment about this new covered terrace. It's on the west side of the existing barn, and that the proposed materials used to create this structure is consistent with the materials that are already there. So we're not changing anything. The roof would be consistent with the roof of the barn. The columns, for example, there's some beautiful woodwork on the house. And the columns on the house would be used as a template for the design and fabrication of these columns. So this is all part of our way of trying to tie it all together with the house. And if I can ask you to have a look at the wall bridge survey for a moment, you can see how the site changes with this proposed covered porch. And so what we're doing is we'd like to propose another structure, an open structure, and that would be to cover the outdoor kitchen. Those drawings you'll find on the last page. Sorry, it's the next to last page of the drawing set. So this is essentially a flat roof. It's actually a trellised roof. There's no real roof on it. It's just like a pergola that would have a footprint of roughly 16 by 20, as it's shown on the drawings and on the wall bridge survey. And those are the elements that we are asking permission to move ahead with.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Billy Hayjack, would you like to? Sure. Give us your input?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. Oh, that's yours. Thank you, Billy.
Yeah. Very thorough presentation. Thank you, Robert. Overall, the big scope of the project, I don't offer any concerns or objections to the board. It is in a historic district. It's an important barn building. It's not extremely visible from the street. It's kind of hidden on the back arm, I would call it, of the property. You have in the past allowed some alterations to the structure. These seem to be consistent with the design criteria. I would just, as like a housekeeping matter, the plans are lacking a lot of detail. We can't be going back and reviewing minutes of the meeting to find out if the cedar shingles are going to match what exists. We just need a set of plans that clearly calls out all the materials. The windows are kind of just open holes. We need the window details, roofing materials, just the specifics of what's proposed.
Right.
Like big picture, I said I don't have a major concern with this,
Right.
but we just need a set of plans that call out colors, materials, and specifics.
Okay.
So that's all.
Thank you, Billy.
Yep.
Tom, Corrado?
No, nothing, unless you have some questions, I don't have any particular.
Okay, then, Robert, will you submit that to the,
I'll be happy to do that. And I apologize for not having it done already.
Okay.
It's typically something that Billy knows we would do, and I feel he's pointed out maybe how quickly we've tried to move this along.
Okay.
But yes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Then we could go ahead maybe and approve this.
I would wait until you have something.
Yeah.
Suggest waiting.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and we'll wait, and you and Billy will get back to the board.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much, everybody.
Thank you.
I have a question now. The beams that are cracked and there's one that looks like it's disintegrating, are you replacing those beams?
Yes.
And kind of leaving all the others?
Well, the way we would typically do a historic restoration
Restoration.
of any structure is anything that's damaged or in need of repair or replacement, we would repair or replace it with the same material. So for
Yes.
example, this barn, third oldest barn in the village, we would use white oak. In other words, we wouldn't go to Riverhead Building Supply and try and pull it all together. So the oak typically comes from other places, up in New England typically, and we would match, for example, and Cheryl knows this, there are some gun stock posts that need to be really replaced. Some we can scarf we can add some material to, meaning replace what's damaged, you carve it out. It's called scarfing. So we can do that in certain places. But there are other parts, like a particular gun stock post I've tried to point out, that needs to be replaced. Now one of the other things that we don't touch upon with the aesthetics, but will drive the engineers crazy, is that there is no foundation here. I mean, we're talking about a structure that is very much like the day it was built, except it's been clad onto. I mean, when the barn was built, there was no garage added onto it. There was no lean-to off the back of it. It's just the garage. And this is typical of a lot of things. We're doing a project now at 35 Sag Road. This is kind of the neglected house at the traffic light in Sagaponack. So we're doing the barn there as well. And we're restoring this fourth oldest house in Sagaponack. So what we are proposing to do is to put in a foundation in such a way that we underpin the entire structure. And after everything is properly underpinned, shored, and the foundation is in, as Cheryl will tell you, we will then go about replacing the structural elements of the timber frame, but using the same material that they're made of today.
I mean, is it all going to be replaced, or can you
No, it's not all
use
going. I
some?
think that would be
Only the
that would be a
damaged
mistake.
timbers.
Yeah, that would be a mistake.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Or if we
my-
replace.
For example, if you look at what we've done at the Captain Isaac Sayer barn in Southampton, we completely took the barn apart. Bob Hefner, in maybe 2010, wrote the historic structure report on that. I personally labeled all those parts. We took it completely apart and then put it back together using many of the existing parts and new parts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Robert. So you'll get back to Billy and then
Billy,
he'll-
I will.
okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the list is the East Hampton Tennis Club by Andy.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Goldstein. I represent the East Hampton Tennis Club. We've applied for permission to, like a site plan approval for 4 pickleball courts on the 2+ acres at the front of the property that's in the village. The tennis courts themselves are in the channel. We applied for and obtained a special permit and area variance from the ZBA. We were before you prior to actually our ZBA hearing, and since that time, the site plan has been modified to move the pickleball courts further back from Route 27 and align them with the existing platform tennis courts. The courts are ground level. They will be surrounded by a wire fence. There will be sound reducing material on the north and east sides of the courts, but it will not be on the side of the court that's actually facing the road. Any view of the court is obscured by the trees. The courts themselves are ground level. The only thing that can be seen is the fence. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, board members?
I've heard and seen people have sunk the courts down about 4 feet, and apparently that provides more sound protection. I don't know if the neighbor has any
The neighbor
dispute
next
with
to it, the
that.
nearest neighbor is actually the house that's owned by the Maidstone Club, and they issued a letter that supports the application.
Okay. That was a thought for mitigating the noise. But
And there's enough vegetation from the Montauk Highway that you don't see these courts?
The intention is to clear only that number of trees that are needed to actually construct the courts. So hopefully the bulk of the trees that you see between the road and what will be the courts will remain.
Thank you. And Billy?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. Since the board last reviewed this application, I had actually requested to the applicant that they shift the courts over and into their property, which they obliged and did, and that triggered the need for a variance, so I supported the variance request. And, you know, they are providing the sound attenuation material. They, for the zoning board application, they submitted a report from an acoustical engineer who documented that the way the sound attenuation material was designed, it was going to reduce the sound to meet the DEC's threshold for not creating a nuisance. So it seems okay to me.
Tom, any further? Okay. Board members, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ann. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any other
So
questions?
the highway's here.
If not, then this concludes our agenda for today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Cheryl. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I think he
Thank you.
said
All in favor?
north end,
See you at the next
which
meeting.
is
Thank you all.